with you.
All right, I call the meeting to order. Start with a roll call.
Tom Dester.
Here.
Scott Holwick.
Here.
Roger Lang.
Here.
Renee Davis is not here today. Dan Wolford.
Here.
Wes Lowry.
Here.
Kevin Bowden.
Here.
Alex Merklin.
Here.
Hope Bartlett.
Here.
Nicole Halpin.
Here.
Chris Huffer.
Here.
John Gage.
Here.
Heather McIntyre is here. Lauren Harding. Here. Josh Sherman.
Here.
Marie Nicholson Hutt.
Here.
We have Jeff Drager with us and Councilmember Christ.
Yes, here.
You're here already.
Chair
I'm
Hunt.
here.
Well, good for you.
You have a quorum.
Welcome. All right. Previous month's minutes.
I mean, we're-
Everybody
30 seconds.
got a chance to
We
read
have
any
30 more
comments or
seconds.
questions
I could
on
go out and
last
come back in.
month's meeting minutes?
I have no comments and move to approve them.
Before you do that,
No,
I
I
accidentally,
just
sorry, I accidentally included the attachment of the water principles in there, and
Yeah.
they were left over from January. So if you would approve them without that attachment.
I will.
Would you agree to that?
Yeah, I absolutely will.
Thank
I didn't know
you.
that they were attached to it. They were just, yeah, I guess they are. They were just there.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye. Approved. Very good. All right, Kevin, you got a status report for us?
Sure do. And then we also have our water commissioner, Sheriff Summerford, online too. So, but I'll give the water status report, and she can kind of tell us what's going on out in the field here.
Hold on.
Flow in the St. Vrain Creek this morning was 25 CFS. The 125-year historic average is approximately the same as 25 CFS. Currently, the call on St. Vrain Creek is the bonus ditch, and that's an 1865 water right. The call on the South Platte is the lower Platte and Beaver Canal with an admin number of, well, you don't need to know that, other than it's 1972 priority date. Button Rock is at an elevation of 6382, and that's approximately 12,584 acre-feet in storage, or approximately 77% of full. Union Reservoir is at a gauge height of 20.37, or approximately 7,734 acre-feet, which is down 5,000 acre-feet, and that's approximately 60% of full. Basin reservoirs at the end of February were approximately 62% of full. Last year at this time, the reservoirs were at 59% of full.
Okay. Any questions?
And Shara could kind of explain, or could you give us a rundown of what's going on out in the field?
Sure thing, I will try my best. So Kevin mentioned the call was involving the bonus. From what I heard from Tom this morning is that the bonus will be shut off, I'm assuming between 7, 8, 9 a.m. tomorrow. And I'm trying to see what to do with those extra, or what to do with that extra flow. I don't know if it'll go yet to Pleasant Valley, or if it's gonna go for someone else for irrigation. So I'm waiting to hear back from George Sittner and all of the bashers to make sure they're not gonna want water. But as soon as I know, I can let you guys know. And then flows are just low, so we're just getting by best we can with the low flows. Irrigation did start early, with as dry as the climate or weather is. We couldn't really say, no, you have to wait till April 1. And I think out east is who started that first for irrigation, and then once it started, then it started really picking up here in District 5. And we're just kind of watching the flows best we can. That's all I have to report.
Question, Sarah?
Yeah, I don't think we've seen a 1865 water call ever.
Let alone this time of year. That's extremely senior. And I kind of put it in perspective. And granted, this isn't real scientific or engineering, but I keep a packet that includes all the different water rights from most senior to junior. That probably went back to maybe 1990 or something. And it includes probably close to 40 pages, and we're in the top 1/3 of the first page. So there's a lot of water rights that would not be getting water with this call. So it's just general relativity speaking, it's going to be there's not going to be much water to go around, and it will only be those senior water rights. Fortunately, Longmont has some of those senior water rights, but even at that, they're usually those really senior water rights, the yield on is pretty small. They're not the big workhorses that you're used to that you'd normally see in more average conditions. So we'll see.
Sounds kind of dire. Okay, thank you. We got some public invited to be heard.
We have Jeff Draker with us from Northern Water, who is going to share.
All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting me. Let's see, where will I start? I won't start with the presentation. Just to say that we're happy to be here. We have a long working relationship with you guys from way back when. In fact, yeah, I think going back to the days when, it goes before this, but Longmont's mayor applied for the Windy Gap water right in 1967. I was a young kid here, and I didn't know that happened, but I guess it did. You know, we've done a lot of things with Longmont over the years. I think 2013 flood, I think having the connection with our canals and pipelines and you guys was important for both of us. I think I heard some of you talking about Erie today. Erie's got issues with their pipeline capacity, and I think there's a question of whether we should turn on our canals early to get more water to Erie, and I don't think that decision's been made yet. But and I'm not surprised if some irrigators don't ask to start irrigating early as well.
They're on restrictions, aren't they, Erie?
Erie is saying they're on restrictions for no outdoor watering, I think. Yeah, so you're talking about the flows in St. Vrain and all of those issues, and as you guys know, our board sets quota April 9th this year. We don't have a pool in our office, but we had a meeting last week, and the estimates from our staff was it'd be anywhere from 70 to 100. It's a typical year where it should be a 100-year quota. It's very dry. In the old days, this clearly would have been 100% quota. I think our board might be a little spooked by what happened in 2002, and 2001 they set high quotas, and we almost ran out of water in 2003. So I don't honestly know where our board is going to come out. If I did, I'd tell you. But if you have issues or concerns, I would suggest you contact a board member or come to our board meeting and provide input, because I think they would. This is a good year to do that, because I would guess our board is all over the map as far as what they think we should do. So that'll be interesting. There was an article I saw in the Fort Collins, Colorado, and that a lot of the cities up in the Fort Collins cities and water districts are waiting to set their water restrictions based on what Northern sets the quota at. So I guess we'll wait and see how that comes out as far as that goes. So I don't know if you guys have other questions about us or our operation. But other than that, I was going to talk about Chimney Hollow, because I've spent a lot of my life on Chimney Hollow the last number of years, and kind of give you an update on where we are there with the construction, the issue we have with the uranium, and a couple other things there. But I'm happy to answer any other questions you guys might have as well.
When you mention the April 9th date, what will we know then?
Our board will set the quota on April 9th. They always set it at the April board meeting. They set a 50% quota in October to get people through the winter. And then in April, it used to be they didn't set any quota until April, but there's more and more municipal use versus ag use now over time. And so they set a 50% quota in October. They'll increase that quota to somewhere, I'd say, between 70 and 100. I would be surprised if they go to 100%, but they will set the quota. That's the typical time they do. They have, in the past, set a quota in April and added a little bit more in May if it was really dry or something. So there have been a few times where that occurred. So, but I think when they set the quota, it gives most of the cities and water districts around here a pretty good idea of where they stand with their system and whether you will want to do.
Tells us how much water we
restrictions.
have to.
Tells you how much
use.
water you have. You have to look at your own supplies and what you have in your reservoirs to make the final decision. But yeah,
Okay.
that's kind of what happens on April 9th.
Well, thank you. I'm already receiving questions, so I'm gonna
Yeah.
have something knowledgeable to say.
It's interesting. We have a lot of storage in Grandview Reservoir, so Grandview Reservoir is pretty high right now. We could easily set a higher quota and easily get through the year. It's a question of, I think it's interesting to me what our board is going to do this year. So it'll be as interesting to our staff as it is to you guys, I think. So, all right.
What's the status of the bypass? When you get bypass?
I'll get to that. It's
Okay.
operating. Yeah, I'll get to that on here. Let's see. What did I do wrong? How do I move this thing?
You want to use the
I
left
use the-
mouse instead. Use this side over here.
Yeah, I used the wrong one.
Yep.
So here's a picture of Chimney Hollow Reservoir. This is a little bit before we completed construction. You can see it's a very unique reservoir. This black line down the middle is the asphalt core, which is very unusual for reservoirs around here. Most of the reservoirs that we've built, Carter and Horsetooth, have maybe rock fill on the outside and clay on the inside to keep the water from leaking out. We didn't have enough clay at Chimney Hollow, so we went with this asphalt. So it was not the first dam in the U.S., but it was the second dam, but it was the first significantly high dam to use this asphalt core. Kind of go through a little bit of, oops, wrong button again. Just to show you everything that was involved in the construction. Obviously the main dam. We have a saddle dam 2.5 miles south. This dam is 350 feet high. The saddle dam is only about 40 feet high, but it holds water in, so it doesn't, to get enough storage that we wanted and to keep it from leaking down into Little Thompson River. There's a road, you can barely see that on there. There's a road on the far west side that goes all the way down to the saddle dam for operations. We have a big quarry here that I'll show another photo of later. That all the rock to build the main dam was quarried out of this quarry on site. We built a cofferdam to keep runoff from getting into the main dam construction, especially when the dam was low, or when we're down in the foundation really of the dam. This cofferdam gets interesting when I start talking about uranium, because that's really where we noticed uranium in the system. There's a valve house down below. The water comes down the hill. You can see this silver pipe here. This is the pipe coming from Grand Lake down into Flatiron Reservoir. From here, from Flatiron just out of the picture, gets pumped to Carter Lake and onto you guys, or it goes by gravity to Horsetooth. We pick it up for Chimney Hollow right up here at the top of this pipe, and we built our own pipe down the hill. It goes to this valve house. From the valve house, water can go into Chimney Hollow Reservoir, into Carter Lake directly, or also down to Flatiron Reservoir. So you can go 3 different ways from the valve house. And water comes out of Chimney Hollow Dam through the valve house to those different directions as well. There's a tunnel underneath right where this photo was taken to get water in and out of the reservoir. So all those pieces and parts were, part of the construction of the reservoir. It took 4 years to build this. I think I'll get to some of the statistics later, but we really pretty much got it done on time. Not quite within budget, but we had some geologic issues that we had to deal with. This dam is also, there's a new road up here, you can barely see it. Larimer County is going to have access here for an open space area at the top. So we built this road to get them there.
And they have what? Access to what?
And access for a recreation area.
Oh, okay.
So it'll be a parking lot, boat parking, and parking for people that go hiking. We crushed the gravel that came out of the quarry, some of it here, and that crushing water that was used to crush and wash some of that ended up in the cofferdam, which gave us ultimately a clue that we had this uranium issue. So just a few stats on here. 12 million yards of rock fill. We did a bunch of concrete. There were 500 workers here when it was, working, 500 workers in the peak working periods, 24 hours a day, most of them during the day, some of them at night. 350-foot high dam. We ended up with a $595 million cost, construction cost. Our original estimate was $485. We had a change order of about $35 million for delays because we had a lawsuit in the permitting before we got started. And then we had another probably $60 million worth of change orders related to geology out there, which if you have questions, we can get into a little of that. The total cost of the project, if you include the work we did for permitting, design, construction management, buying the site, some of those things, was over $700 million. It's interesting, when you build a project this big with all those pieces, we had our design engineer out there on the site. We also had a construction manager on site, and the two of them every month billed us about $1 million a month just for oversight of the project. It's when work is being done, you have to have somebody there to inspect it and understand what's going on. This is a picture of the dam when it's essentially done. I think the picture on the left, I think that's the paving machine coming down for the very last time down the middle of the reservoir. There's a paving machine that paved a 9-inch layer of asphalt and 5 feet of gravel on either side to hold the asphalt in place. And then we piled up rock on the side of it. To the right is just a picture of what the dam looks like, looking at it from the side view. It's a pretty tall dam. On the left is the valve house, so just downstream, this is where the water comes in and out of Chimney Hollow Reservoir through that valve house. This is looking upstream from the dam. Here's the inlet-outlet tower. So we have this tower that's going to be far underwater in the reservoir. The tunnel ends here, goes out to the upstream side. So this is where water will actually come in and out of the reservoir, just to give you a feel for that. Closer look at the valve house. I think this is interesting just because you can see here where this water, out of the valve house, we can release water here to go down to Flatiron Reservoir. On the left here, this is actually the spillway. That comes down here and it intersects with this channel and goes into Flatiron Reservoir. Just to give you a feel for this. This valve house is, I think, 120 feet long this way. It's a pretty big house with a bunch of 72 and 54-inch valves in there to make the water move different directions. Their pressure on the upstream side with the water coming in is 460 psi, so it's very high pressure water coming in that we have to deal with as we go through. This is a picture of the tunnel, upstream side of the tunnel, or downstream side of the tunnel, where the water comes out of the tunnel into Flatiron. And I was going to talk a little bit about uranium. As I mentioned earlier, it was kind of interesting. We had our contractor had permits that he had to sample the water that was released from the site during construction. And they had a treatment plant there. When they sampled that water, for a long period of time, they didn't see any issues with uranium. The cofferdam, I lose track of the year. I think it was 2023. I think we had a bunch of rainstorms. The cofferdam got very full, and so we had to pump the water out of that cofferdam downstream so we had enough room in the cofferdam for the next big rainstorm. During that time, we did more testing, and that's when we realized we had those high uranium levels. The uranium levels went up and down even at that time, but they were finally at a point where, for a while, and maybe I'm not very smart, but for a while I thought it was really just the recycling of that water from processing sand and gravel that was just being recycled and building up the concentrations. But over time it became clear that maybe we had a bigger issue than that. So we think we have this issue where the uranium levels are gonna be higher than the EPA standard, which is 30 micrograms per liter, which is parts per billion. So, we started some scoping studies early in 2025. We took a bunch of samples of the rock that were still in the quarry or in the crushing area that was used to build the reservoir. We took different sizes of rock. We gave them to a lab in Fort Collins that does a lot of sampling and processing water for mining type folks. They put this rock in these big plastic drums, like a 55-gallon drum. We filled it up with water from Flatiron Reservoir, which is the same water that will go into Chimney Hollow, and then we monitored that over time. And from those samples, we started figuring out how much uranium we thought might leach into the reservoir. And it's a pretty interesting, if you think about it, what we determined is that, there's uranium in the granite. It's really on the edges of the rock. So if you have a big rock, water can leach uranium off the outside edges of the rock. If you have small sand and gravel, then it can leach it around that whole piece. So if you have smaller rock that's been crushed, you're going to get more uranium leaching out of that rock. And once it leaches out of the rock, when we fill the reservoir, it would leach out of the rock. It will just sit in the dam because there's nothing to move it out of there until we start draining the reservoir. And then the water will come out into the reservoir itself, which is when we figure we need to deal with it. So there are some questions still on how fast that water will move out. Are those samples that the lab did in Fort Collins, are they going to be as accurate, as what happens here? So I would say we're not 100% sure what's going to happen, but we have our best guess of what's going to happen. We've also done a lot of analysis. We had an engineer do 3D modeling of Chimney Hollow Reservoir. They have to make some assumptions on how fast the water moves out of the dam into the reservoir. We had our own staff do modeling studies of if we release water at different levels of uranium, concentrations of uranium out into Flatiron Reservoir and on into the rest of the CBT system, what will the concentrations of that water be? They also looked at treatment in the reservoir itself. We're still looking at the possibility to treat the water in the reservoir, maybe recycle it in the reservoir. So we're looking at all of those things. Our idea, this says no regrets first fill plan. We're probably going to fill slow, and we're going to keep track. We're going to monitor. We're not going to fill it and start draining water out as much as I would like to do that. I'm probably not going to do that. I only say that because I've been working on this project so long. I'm ready for it to be done and move on to the next level. But we're not quite there yet. So, one big issue is public perception. And actually, I've been a little surprised. I don't know how you guys feel, but I think we've had less negative public opinions and letters and other types things than I really thought we would have when we started this. So from that perspective, it's been interesting. Most of the different participants in Chimney Hollow that we've talked to have told us the same thing. I haven't heard much from Longmont either, so maybe it's the same here.
I don't know if they grasp or understand or exactly how big a problem it is.
Yeah. Well,
Okay,
so let me just kind of give you some rough ideas. It's a good question that I should have hit on already. The standard, the EPA standard is 30 parts per billion. We think when we fill the reservoir, if we were to fill it up, we would have uranium in the levels of maybe 300 or 400 parts per billion. So maybe 10 times more than what the standard is. So, that's relatively significant. There are also standards for wildlife and fish, and I think we'd be under those standards, but we'd be above the drinking water standards, so, which is what we're really concerned with. So, how do we deal with that? One way, when we release water out of Chimney Hollow Reservoir, it's diluted by the water coming down from the Adams Tunnel from the west slope at maybe a 20-to-1 ratio. So we could reduce the uranium concentrations pretty significantly just by, dilution, just by blending. But we still have some concerns that, there might be times when those concentrations would be higher than 30, where we'd have issues. I think we heard from our participants in a bunch of meetings that they would probably like to see water coming out of there much lower than the 30 parts per billion. I think, depending on where you live on the Front Range, there are some of the creeks around here that have uranium levels in the single digits, maybe 5 or 7 parts per billion. So if we were down in that range, it wouldn't be totally out of line with what some folks are seeing around here, at least at certain times. Depending on how high or where your water is, if it comes from Button Rock, it's probably got no uranium in it. If it comes maybe further downstream where it's diverted, maybe a little more. So it all depends a little bit. I don't know if that helps answer your
Well,
question.
just a question. Will the water treatment plants be involved in
Yeah.
knocking that down? I mean, I would imagine.
They will. I mean, so the other thing we're looking at is actually what we call in-reservoir treatment, treating the water in the reservoir. And I'll show that on a slide here. But when the uranium comes into your treatment plant would reduce uranium. Standard water treatment will reduce the uranium levels, but if the uranium is very high coming into your treatment plant, you may end up with high uranium levels in the sludge, in the residuals of your treatment plant, that might be difficult for you to dispose of. It might require you to dispose of it a different way than you do right now. So, there are all those issues that you have to deal with.
Yeah.
Listen,
I was just going to mention. So I'm a geochemist. I've worked on uranium issues in other venues, I guess, and as you can imagine, I have lots of thoughts and comments, and I've been very interested in tracking everything that's going on here. And just kind of initially, I just kind of wonder. Of course, you mentioned public perception has been much more dampened perhaps than what you had. Or the kind of outcry or something has been much more dampened than you had anticipated. I wonder if that would have changed if there were to be water in the reservoir right now.
Oh, I
or
think
if
so.
there
And I
were to
think
be delivery.
when we start releasing, I think there will be more people asking questions.
People will be coming out of the woodwork.
I absolutely think
with
that's right.
questions and perhaps fears and concerns, and that's when it'll really, I think, amp up certainly. The other thing I was gonna mention was, it's a good point about the sludges at the wastewater treatment plants. That's certainly a difficulty once you get above certain standards, and they'll have a hard time disposing of those. But given that land application is frequently, something that they do, they won't be able to do that kind of thing. And then a question: you had mentioned that you thought that delivery within the system itself would dilute the water to some degree. Was that 3 to 4 times you said?
I think it's more like 10 times or more.
Oh, okay.
The water coming down the tunnel is 500 cubic feet per second or 550. Our deliveries out of Chimney Hollow would probably be 50 CFS or less, probably more like 15 or 20 a lot of times. So there's a very high dilution factor.
Right.
But those are all good questions. And in fact, we had our engineers look at this issue, but we had questions from participants, including Longmont, that maybe we need a third party to look at it. We hired a third party engineering firm to do that. We had a workshop with them, but we don't have their final report yet. But from what I heard in the workshop, I don't think they have significant issues with what our consultant said. But I guess we're supposed to get a report maybe even this week from that group, and that will kind of help. That's a group that I think does more mining type work, and then maybe is deals with uranium probably more than our consultants do. So
for sure. And then lastly, the contractor that had noticed this problem in behind the cofferdam from sampling that water, presumably you were going to do some discharges, it sounded like, and that's why that there was a need to be able to
we needed a sample.
Was that in the permit? Like, was uranium in the permit, or why did they? I guess I'm wondering why did they wind up
that's a very
sampling
good
for
question.
uranium, because it's not standard. I don't
Our
think.
standard permit, it's the way the permitting thing works. For the first 2 years of construction, I think our contractor had some sort of stormwater management permit, and they were not required to sample for uranium. But because the construction is 4 years, the rules changed. So about midway through the project, they got a new permit, and in the new permit, it had a requirement
Okay.
to sample for uranium.
Okay.
So that's when we really first started any sampling. They were discharging a very small amount of water, and they had a treatment system there that was actually reducing the uranium in that very small system. So we didn't really see uranium levels until we had that higher discharge when the water levels got high, and we sampled that water, and I don't remember the numbers, but I want to say, the uranium levels were 10 or 15 parts per billion. They were higher, quite a bit higher, and they were above our standards. So, we notified CDPHE. I think, I'm not an expert in this either, but because it was an emergency and what was going on, I don't believe we had any sort of, we didn't have any fines or anything that were associated with it.
No reaction much.
What's that?
No reaction much, because the water was just sitting
Yeah,
there.
and that water, we did release some water that was higher, and that did go out into the CVT system. So, there was probably a couple of days where you guys and everybody else had some higher uranium levels, and then they were gone again. But that happened for a short time.
I was just curious because this situation is not unique to this particular valley, right? I mean, there's uranium and granitic rock all through Colorado, and sandstones all through the west. And I'm just, I would imagine that if we had sampled at lots of reservoir constructions, we would have found this problem in lots of times
Yeah.
if they had been doing this in the 1940s and 50s when we were building all these dams. So
A lot
so
of people
anyway,
have asked that question, and that's possible.
Yeah.
The other question that you said, there is uranium. We also have a third party, another consultant who's looking at our design engineer and saying, should our design engineer have figured this out during design? I think, and this is my own personal opinion, so my lawyer would probably want to smack me, but clearly we had a lot of experienced engineers who looked at this design, and none of them said anything about it. So my guess would be that it just wasn't standard thing to do in design, but my guess is also that in the future it will be standard
Yeah, I bet.
for people to look at this. But that's my guess. I don't know what our consultant will say. We haven't. It's a long story, but he's just under contract fairly recently and not far along yet.
So how's this impacting Larimer County?
Larimer County, the open space, do you mean? Or?
They're not anticipating opening to the public until 27 or 28?
They originally, I think they're thinking they might not open at this point now for another 4 or 5 years until we get more water in the reservoir.
Yeah.
They have other projects, and they don't have enough money to do more than one at a time, so they've reoriented, they've reprioritized how they're going to do their work, and so I think they're going to delay the open of the Chimney Hollow open space. Okay, let's see what else I have here. So just for your information, this is the quarry. One of the things that we did on the site, because there was a lot of excess material around, material that didn't meet our specifications, so there were piles of sands and gravels and rock that didn't meet our specification. We buried them in the quarry, and there was a low spot in the quarry. We buried them, and we covered them with 3 feet of clay, so that's going to keep that uranium from coming into the reservoir, basically. So that's one of the mitigation things that we've already done. Some of that work actually delayed the completion of our construction from probably last October to right about now. Our contractor thinks they'll finish sometime in April, I think, to be done with all of the little pieces. 99.99% of the work is done, but there are a couple small details that aren't complete yet. But yeah, just to give you a feel for what this looks like. Also let you take a look at the quarry to get a feel for, what that looks like. Here's what we're thinking right now, and I will say this is what staff is thinking. We don't have agreement from all of the 12 participants in the Chimney Hollow Reservoir and what we're going to do. But what we're thinking is, this is the main dam here. We'll fill about 1,500 acre-feet of water in the main dam, and we'll let it sit there 3 to 6 months, something like that. We'll monitor it, keep an eye on how much uranium comes in there, and then we can actually pump it from here up into the quarry, because there's actual storage space in the quarry itself. We were supposed to dig a channel between here to make this space part of the main reservoir, but we haven't done that yet. We told our contractor not to do that so we could store water here, and then what we're thinking, one option would be to take the water out of this quarry, pump it into a little treatment plant it's an ion exchange treatment plant that can treat the water, and then put it back down into the reservoir. And during that process, we will then have a much better feel for how the system's gonna behave and how it's gonna actually operate. So, yes, that's one of the reasons why.
That 770 now just went to like 1?
Not that much. I mean,
Right.
we think this treatment, if we do it over a period of time, is probably on the order of $20 million plus or minus, which is a lot of money, but compared to the 700 that we've spent,
Yeah.
and the fact that you probably would like to get water out of this reservoir after spending what you already did.
And it would be a temporary treatment plant? Is that
We think it would be a temporary treatment plant. Definitely do it, probably for 6 months or more to treat this water that we put here. And then we're thinking we might let it run for another several years and just have a floating pumps out in the reservoir and pump water up to the plant and treat it and just recirculate it back in the reservoir. And we won't actually release water out of the reservoir. Well, we'll do that in a slow pace so that we don't release water that has too high of uranium levels in it as we go forward.
So who's responsible for the treatment plant?
When you say who,
Well, who's operating it, who?
okay, that's a very good question as well. The treatment plant is pretty straightforward. It's ion exchange. There are these big tanks with chemical resin in there, and you just run the water through there. The uranium absorbs to the resin, and the clean water comes out of the bottom. It's very simple to operate. We don't know yet if the state CDPHE, Public Health and Environment, is going to require us to have a certified treatment plant operator, or if it doesn't matter because we're just recirculating into the reservoir. We're not releasing it to the public. Will they let our crew that doesn't have treatment,
Credentials.
They don't have credentials for treatment, but they can operate the pumps and the pipes and all that stuff that happens. We will be monitoring it, and there's a company that runs those treatment plants that does this nationwide on other projects, typically not this big, but they do this on a lot of other projects. They are experienced at taking that chemical resin and disposing of it in a way that meets the regulations. I can't remember the name. It's Rocky Mountain Low-Level Radioactive Waste Board or Association or something like that is the permits for this. So they have all those requirements. My understanding is they send it to some place to dispose of it, and they actually extract the uranium out of the resin and use it for other purposes. But that's part of the cost of the whole thing. So when you say who's going to do that, it's our crew's doing a lot of it. If we need a certified treatment plant operator, we'll either hire one on staff or get a consultant that can do that for us so we meet those requirements. If you're asking who's paying for it, it's you and the other 12 participants. So
Well, it's no surprise.
So that's kind of where we are, and this is not very exciting to me because it's going to take a long time to fill the reservoir. We now think instead of filling it in 2 or 3 years, it's going to be 5 years or, 5 or 6 years to fill the reservoir. Which I don't like because I'm getting close to retiring, so that doesn't really fit my work schedule, but it's just kind of the way it is. And so, we're gonna be very careful. We'll communicate with everybody, hope that everybody's comfortable with what we're doing. So I think, well, that's close to the end, but you asked me another question, the connectivity channel. So I don't know how much you know about this behind the black thing here.
There, it went away.
Oh, okay. Well, you can't still see it, but the Windy Gap, this is the Windy Gap Reservoir. Windy Gap Reservoir used to be all the way down here. And the pump station is, right up here in this corner of the reservoir. What we did was we built a new dam here to make our reservoir smaller, and then we built this channel around it. So most of the time, the water that comes down, the Colorado River and the Fraser River come together right around here. Most of the time, the water is going to go downstream through this channel, more like a natural system. When we are actually pumping Windy Gap water, it'll come this way into the reservoir, and then we'll pump it. So, that's the connectivity channel. This chart is kind of weird because I just put this in here so you could see all the different. A whole bunch of different people gave money to this. This was a big stakeholder project. A lot of the people, West Slope Trout Unlimited, really helped us get a lot of these sponsors. Actually, NRCS gave most of the money for this thing. NRCS, it was a $30 million project. NRCS gave probably $20 million. Northern gave $5 million. The state gave $5 million. Grand County gave $1 million. So that the value of the project added up. But essentially, what we've done is taken this, what was an on-stream reservoir, and made it into an off-stream reservoir. Our lawyers don't like it when I say that because, according to the water right, the Colorado River still, in water rights perspective, comes through the reservoir and not through the new channel. But that's legal kind of stuff. So I have just a couple photos so you can see that it actually is complete. So here's the new reservoir. The old reservoir came all the way over to here. Here's the new channel coming through, so it is operating. We divert, right up here is where the diversion structure is. So I have this picture, which looks pretty good. You can see we're starting to get grasses growing and all of those other things. This is an aerial view looking from the other direction of the same project, just to give you a feel. So the Colorado River is right here. This is the Fraser River. They come together, and right here we built a structure that most of the time diverts water through the new channel. So it's actually a very cool project. If you get up there, we'd be happy to take you up there and show you what's going on there. It's not open to the public yet, but I would say not this year, but maybe next year, this will be open to the public for fishing. And if you're familiar with Grand County, there's a lot of streams in Grand County, but most of them are privately owned and not available for public fishing. So this will give over a mile of stream available for public fishing. So that will be nice up there. So I hope that answers your question.
Absolutely, thank you.
That might be the end of it.
Dan wants to know when he can fish up there.
Probably next year, but I'm not sure about that. It's up to Colorado Parks and Wildlife, but I think last year was very good. You could see how the vegetation's come in pretty well on this photo. So we kept the flows low through the channel last year so that we didn't blow out a lot of the seeding and vegetation that was done. This year, I think they wanted higher flows to come through here, but I'm not sure we're going to see higher flows. And we're not sure, I didn't say this earlier, we're not sure if we'll be able to pump Windy Gap water this year because the flows will be relatively low. I'm guessing we might be able to pump a little bit, but it's not going to be very much. Okay, maybe that's the end of that's the end of my presentation. So,
Questions?
Well, I'm not an engineer, I'm a business person. So let me ask this question. Is it possible to remove the gravel, or is the uranium out of the rock, so to speak, and you can't get that gravel and the uranium out of there since the water is low?
You mean right now?
Yeah.
We looked at a bunch of different options for what we could do there, and we did not find one that wasn't more difficult or more expensive or really difficult process to do. So the best option that we've come up with is what I was kind of throwing out there as mitigation, yeah. We looked at several different options, including putting a sprinkler system on the dam and trying to get it to
Cleaning it as
to
it
clean
goes.
it out as we go and doing some of those sort of things. Putting wells in the dam so we could, pump the uranium out of the wells going through the dam. Our design engineer didn't like that very well, so, there are just issues with all of them, and the costs were probably more expensive than the option we've come up with, so that's kind of where we are.
And just to reiterate, the water would initially go into the pool below or above the dam, or into the quarry first?
It'll first go into the pool right near the dam where where the dam is supposed to be.
And so then
And
it
then
gets
we'll
treated.
pump it up into the quarry and
Treat.
treat it from there.
Yeah, and then eventually it has to go back down into the.
And eventually it goes back down
pool
in, and then
below.
we'll fill it, drain it a little bit, fill it a little higher, drain it, so it's gonna
Okay.
be a stair-step kind of operation.
I was wondering,
Up, down, so we get the uranium out a little bit at a time.
because the important exposure, and this speaks to what you were mentioning too, the important exposure is along the material that's on the face of the, or the back face of the dam, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so bringing it up a little, okay, so I understand that, and that's the way that you essentially are washing.
That's the way that we
Yeah.
see it operating, and that's how we'll wash it, I think, doing this first 1,500 acre feet and sampling and treating. Once we do that, we'll see how close our estimates were to
Yeah,
reality.
okay. But and presumably you can't do that very high on the dam because you'll run out of room to be able to get water into the quarry.
Right.
So what is the
We're
difference?
filling
in
it up to
elevation?
1,500 acre feet is the amount that the quarry will hold. Probably, I don't know how much, I would guess, we could fill it up. I mean, the top of the quarry is probably more like 20,000 acre feet or something.
You think?
like that.
Oh, wow, okay. So there's a little bit
So
of
there's
space
more, there's
to wash
space
and
in
wash
there,
and
but
wash.
yeah, I mean, we're gonna go up a little bit at a time.
Yeah.
What's interesting is, we're gonna put 1,500 acre feet in there, which is a tiny bit of water compared to, it's a 90,000 acre foot reservoir. But the water's gonna be 100 feet deep in the reservoir when it's
Mhm.
only 1,500 acre feet. So it's gonna get a lot of that dam wet, and we'll drain it at that point. So that's kind of the plan.
Well, the key to the public is the water coming out of our treatment plant
Right.
is not gonna be tainted, I mean, that's
Yeah, and I think whatever
that's the
we,
key, what you do in the dam and that, but once we treat it.
once we release it and you treat it, it's it's going to be even lower after you treat it.
Yeah.
But the other thing is, we don't want, when you treat it, for you to have problems with your treatment plant with the sludge and the residuals and things.
Yeah.
So that there's a trade-off there on how that all works. Loveland did some testing of that, pilot testing. I think Broomfield may have as well. We don't have their results yet, but some of them have done a little bit of testing and got some idea of how much uranium might be in the sludges that are left over after the treatment process. So, and that seemed to match pretty well with our calculations.
Anything else? Well, thanks, Jeff. That's
Yeah, it's really
good
well
Thank you.
presentation.
Sorry.
Thank you.
I took more than I should have of time, but
No,
I
that's all
appreciate
right.
it.
Well, we spent a couple of bucks on it, so, I think that was good value.
Millions of dollars worth of information. So,
45, maybe 50 minutes.
thanks again.
It's good.
Thank you, Jeff.
Okay, we got any agenda revisions?
I have none.
Sorry?
I have none.
Okay. Okay, development activity, doesn't look like there's much going on there. Any comments concerning that? Just, no. Okay. Can't believe we're getting the cash in lieu.
Cash in lieu. So, what I included in the packet was a little bit of background and history that the way cash in lieu is determined is described in the city code. And in that, it's cash in lieu fee is set by resolution by city council. And it tells us the basis that the cash in lieu will be determined shall include current cost of new water supply projects identified in the city's raw water master plan, the current market value associated with the purchase of units of CBT water, and the current market value of non-historical native basin water rights. And so we've already talked previously about cash in lieu and its volatility and how that created a lot of issues in the past when we just used cash in lieu. The non-native or non-historical native basin water rights, they're pretty few and far between. We just don't have a lot of data. And so it kind of lends itself to really looking at the other element, which was new raw water supply projects. And so for a long time, the primary project that was referenced was Chimney Hollow. But as Jeff spoke, we're nearly complete on the construction. There's going to be operational aspects of moving forward, but there are other structural elements that the raw water master plan has identified that we look at. Those are enlarged Button Rock, large Union Reservoir pumpback project, are three of the main structural elements. Then we have non-structural elements that kind of are water conservation efforts that we do, our application of our raw water policy and so forth. But with respect to new water supply projects, that's one that I think is understandable for a lot of people. It certainly made a lot of sense. There was costs associated with doing Chimney Hollow, and we looked at those costs and we came up with the amount. But now that that's kind of over, we need to look at what's the next thing that we would be doing. And so when we looked at our raw water master plan, we looked at all these different other structural elements, and some of the ones that are coming up is probably most likely is the Union Reservoir pumpback pipeline, and it kind of goes hand in hand with Union Reservoir enlargement. And so, not to be as specific as we were able to be with the Chimney Hollow, because that's the enlargement of Union Reservoir is still what would be described as being a long-term project, something that's probably 30 years out. But it takes a long time, just like Chimney Hollow, from the time you start working on it to actually seeing the completion of a project. So in the interim, though, the idea behind cash in lieu, is that the purpose of us of Longmont receiving water through application of its raw water policy is so that it can provide water for the uses of the city of Longmont. It was really easy to think about if you had a residential neighborhood that was being built, you're taking that water, you're going to add municipal use, and that water is going to provide water for those homes. And there's other uses that we use the water for open space and greenways and so on and so forth. But that being said, there are costs associated with developing that water. So if you go back into the early 60s, the water that Longmont was receiving was some of those more senior water rights that we kind of talked about earlier. So you think about just naturally, as Longmont grew, it started around the river and it grew out. The further out you got, the more junior the water rights became and the less of them there were. So now when lands are being annexed, they don't have the same amount of historical water that you would have normally have seen, decades before. So that then means in order to satisfy the policy, they have a bigger gap. So as you guys all may recall, at annexation, we transfer all historic water rights pertinent to the property. And then if those are insufficient to provide at least 3 acre-feet of water per acre of land, that difference is met. There's 2 options to meet that. Either transfer of non-historical water or cash in lieu. And that's where we get here today, is we're talking about that cash in lieu. And the idea is that Longmont would use that money to support increasing its water supply. And that would include projects like Union Reservoir enlargement or a Union Reservoir pumpback pipeline or something like that. So as we were looking at that, we were talking about even last month about some different indices so that developers who are paying these costs could have have a greater expectation of what their costs would be in as much advanced time as possible, and not see these wild swings. If you go on the City of Longmont's Water Resources page, you've seen there was a couple times where cash in lieu like tripled, and then sometimes it went way down. There was a period of time where literally cash in lieu was changing every month, and the policy allowed for that. And so nobody did anything wrong, but what it made, it was so volatile for the developers, it was really hard to get a handle, because they knew they had to go out and get financing to pay for that. Well, what's it going to cost? Well, I don't know. I can tell you today, tomorrow will be different. It's like we're really struggling. And so what was discussed and what was determined was that if we were able to set cash in lieu early enough in the year, give enough lead time for developers so they would know what to expect, and that fee, that cost, they could kind of count on for the next year, would be really helpful for them in their planning. And so that's kind of where we got today, where we're going to talk about it today, a couple of the indices that we might use as a consideration for setting the fee for cash in lieu. But the actual decision would be made in June, and then in July or August, hopefully, be able to take that to City Council for a resolution for their approval and become effective in January. So Renee wasn't here. I was able to talk with her. She had some really good insights. You may recall even from back in June of last year, she provided a few different indexes that we might consider for reference. I've listed 3 of them in your packet. They're the same 3 actually that we included last month. There is a lot of different indexes that you can use. I don't think there's necessarily a silver bullet. This is the index you should use. I think what the idea is that you're trying to find an index that would represent what costs would be to build maybe or to impact increasing our water supply, like our Union Reservoir pump-back pipeline or Union Reservoir enlargement. That's a long ways in the future. But that being said, we've looked at, historically we've used construction cost indexes that are relative to this area. You can do you can do a nationwide index, you can do a Colorado index, you can have one that's more Denver Front Range. You can kind of, try to drill it down. The one that we were kind of looking at was one that was more specific for our area, for just general construction. Again, there's so many different unique elements, it's kind of difficult to say which one, but there were some conversations about maybe we should be looking at not just the construction costs, but maybe things such as kind of something that reflects like wages or labor costs, or something that would also be a part of that, or material costs that kind of have they have impacts, but some of those can be kind of a little volatile in themselves even. So I kind of think of it as like mutual funds. Like instead of investing in a single stock, you do a mutual fund. Maybe you're in 1,000 different companies, and maybe what we're talking, a possibility could be a composite index. So maybe you're in 3 different mutual funds. So instead of one stock, you're in like 3,000 different companies. You're just getting a real broad paintbrush. And you may argue that these 20 really don't apply, and it's only these 20 that really do. But whatever's selected should probably be, what should be considered is how much time and energy is involved to come up with a factor or a number. Is to spend a lot of resources, which includes time, to create that is really important to water resources. And so I think some of these indexes that we've got here make a lot of sense from water resources staff perspective. I kind of like the composite index because you're just covering more things. And you can weight them if you want. I would suggest that they would maybe be equally weighted, mainly just because it's hard to decide why is one more than another, but that can certainly happen. If you took the 3 indexes that we included here, you're literally, the average of the 3 is just over 5%. It's about 5.4% increase is what we would then be looking at. And I think just from a simple, maybe some people would call it a laugh test or a general perspective, That seems somewhat reasonable. I don't think a developer would say, wow, in 2 years you've increased 5%, that's outrageous. How could you even think that? But I also think it's consistent with costs are going up. I don't know anything I'm buying now that's less than it was before. And so there could be any indexes that we want. I think these three here capture it pretty well. They're relatively easy to get. They're just a factor that we relative over a period of time that we could present to water board. It would be relative to the current fee for cash in lieu of water rights received times this index. And so just for example, if we were here 3 months from now and these were the percentages and numbers, cash in lieu would go about $2,200, would increase about $2,200. So relative to $60,000, yeah, it's $2,200, or $2,250 is actually closer to where it's at. But it's real money, but relative to what it's going to cost to build a Union Reservoir pumpback pipeline or a Union Reservoir enlargement, I think it makes a lot of sense. We're also looking at doing some evaluations on kind of partnering with some folks. There's some other interest in doing some structural elements with Longmont, like Union Reservoir. And it's been a while since we've really done a cost estimate to do an enlargement. And I think that's something that we could do within the next year or so. We could have somebody say, what if we were going to enlarge Union to a certain height? And that's to be determined. But you pick a certain height, what would be the cost? And that could give us an indication of what it would cost on a per acre foot basis. And we could add that into it as well, or use it as a litmus test to see if these indices are kind of meeting each other. But I think in the interim, absent doing that, there needs to be something that we can ground to determine the any adjustment to the fee for cash in lieu. And I think these, the ones that I've got here is the one that's related to the commodity of index for construction, one consumer price index, and then a construction cost composite trend. And I think those, I feel like, touch on the key elements of any structural project that we may be doing in the near future. But open to you all, if there's other indices that you think would be better served, or if you would like to only use one. I think the main thing is that it represents what the increased cost would be. Because the idea is that Longmont's going to take money as cash in lieu. We're going to invest it until we need it. So you're going to be making interest on that money. So it's not just going to be, sitting in a mayonnaise jar in fucking Wagnall's, porch. But it'll be until we need it. And I think that's accomplishing what the goal was for cash in lieu. So I'm here to answer any questions, or if you have any specific
comments.
ones.
And you got a look in your eyes. I got a question.
Yeah, can I offer something? It's kind of a busy month for me because I'm an accountant, but I've been studying on this. I just haven't gotten any information to you. One of the things is we had the state demographer come and talk to us, and they also had a gal from what's called the Colorado Futures out of CSU. And so what was interesting about that is the state demographer says the GDP is generally 9 months behind, so they consider their information to be at least a year behind. But the Colorado Futures group uses a different process so that they can be 6 months within what they think is accurate. Okay. And it was more not necessarily that you're doing anything economically, but in a way this is, and it's more about the methodology. Which they use 6 indices to come up with a factor that they think is forward-looking. CPI would be one of them. GDP would be a regressive. And they say they are coming up with a more contemporary litmus test, if you will, and it has proven itself over 2 years' time to be accurate. And so I think you're on the right track in terms of 3 indices. Maybe you ought to consider adding a few more that you think are, I think Renee mentioned something that maybe you might have to pay for, but that she thought was pretty forward. and creating a model, and if you weight them all exactly the same and see what that comes out to be. I think 5.5 is low, because I'm just talking to my counterparts here, and our rate increase is gonna be 10% for the consumer. And we were saying, and this came up, so it was another counselor that said it's 6.5 for electric. I think it was 7, actually, more like around 7. I'm trying to think what Lance said.
All of the rate increases for all of the utilities was 6.7.
6.7 when you averaged them all?
Yes.
Okay,
But
so.
water was 9.
Water was 9
9%.
specifically, and it's a dry year. I think the expectation is that it would be higher
Yeah.
because of scarcity.
that.
Yeah.
And
So
I think, I'm
that's
sorry.
about all I have to say. So
Yeah,
just
no, I
wanted
think
to
that's
share that
good,
with
and
you.
I think, understand that we can still be discussing the right indices over the next couple months, and hopefully have the right ones selected, whichever one the board decides is the most appropriate ones to use, and then it's just kind of sort of simple math. The hard part is deciding which ones, and so we can look at different ones and talk about those as we move forward too.
Isn't Northern currently doing construction or planning and, for like Glade and some of the other, that certainly we could use as part of that? Yeah, I mean, the other question I have is, do we need to go back to council and change the city charter to include this indices?
To what?
To include these indexes?
Oh, it wouldn't be the charter, it'd be the code, but, so this is part of our section.
Okay, the municipal code,
Yeah.
yeah, changing the municipal
Mhm.
code. to
I don't
include
think
that.
I don't think it has to be that specific. I think it just says that you'll evaluate, you'll look at different things. You may look at something and say, I'm evaluating that, for example, non-historic water. I'm gonna look at non-historic water, tell me what you've got, I don't have anything, okay, well then there's nothing to use. Or you may look at something and you may say, I'm looking at CBT, and those prices, or for whatever reason, in the last quarter, are outrageous. Maybe there was a huge development on the Front Range by a water provider that can only use CBT, and because of supply and demand, a unit of CBT goes to $100,000 a unit, which puts cash in lieu, over $140,000 per acre foot. So I don't know that we have to add indices.
According to the municipal code, as you stated, it's pretty clear of what our options are for evaluating
It is.
that. And to include another element, I mean, you guys do what you need to do with legal staff to review that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, and we can check with legal staff, but I think that using some kind of a construction indices or another indices to bring forward estimated construction costs fit within the language of the
Okay.
code now, but we'll certainly get a read from the city attorney's office on that too.
A couple of comments. So I was particularly drawn towards the Bureau of Reclamation construction costs for a variety of different reasons. Number one, so the history of that, I've done a bunch of reading on it, and my dad worked there as well, so I knew a little bit a priori about it as well. But the history of that is, of course, when they used to build a bunch of dams, they had a really good idea of like what things cost, right? And so that's the background behind that index. Of course, now we don't build dams, but they still kept the thing going, right? This time based on economists and everything else, rather than just the actual costs of them building dams over time, right? So it's already a composite index. It considers something like 35 different kind of like cost factors along the way, everything from labor through equipment, through land prices, and siting and purchase of equipment as well. And in fact, one of the factors that it explicitly mentions that it includes is the very first index that in the list that we have here, right? And so all of the averaging these would do, at least amongst those two indices, would just be placing higher emphasis on that particular index than the already composite index of the VOR's composite index. So of course that also entails projects that are just hyper-specific to the type of thing that we would presumably be doing in the future. And so to me, rather than just like general construction, whatever that means, right? And so to me, that one just kind of like speaks very explicitly to the things that we will be doing in the future, and already factors in a ton of things that we wouldn't want to spend our time doing. Let's let the Bureau of Reclamation do it, and we just steal it from them, right? We just steal the data that they came from, so, or that they came up with. I mean, that's what I thought.
Got any comments, Scott?
Nothing that's unique, although I would suspect that the BOR composite trend aligns nicely with the kind of stuff we're doing. I'm wondering if there's any regional balancing on that, because the project that you do in Colorado is going to be vastly different price components than the project you do in Georgia. It just is.
Yeah.
So I like the other indices because there's a regional equalization piece to it.
Yeah.
And I don't know that that's material. I just don't. I don't know how many projects BOR is looking at that they're bringing into that matrix, and if there's any balancing factors within that or not. So that's just a reaction. Tom, I think that that's probably the most legitimate if you're selecting a single index.
Yeah, and that was a good point. I can't remember who brought it up earlier, but whether it's like there was some mention of something before that really caught my ear. But anyway, yeah, the regionality of it is important. I don't know how it all factors in, but they do have like some kind of state adjustments or something like that.
I just was curious. Yeah.
And certainly BOR essentially only operates kind of from here west, right? I mean, from South Dakota-ish west, right? Otherwise, Bureau of Reclamation really isn't an entity in Georgia, right?
True.
And so certainly it incorporates western land prices and such. I don't know that Denver's a whole lot different than Idaho these days or not.
I know that there is an index, and Renee shared it with me, and one that we can certainly use that is more specific to this area.
Yeah.
And I think that would be appropriate to use more specific, because it kind of doesn't matter what it would cost in California or Florida if we're building in Colorado.
I just, coming back from California where I paid $9 for a gallon of gas, there is a distinct difference between project location. And frankly, one of the things we have on the Union project is potentially the acquisition of land. It's just going to be a higher per unit cost here than it's going to be in Nebraska, right?
Yeah.
There's some regional and local variances that maybe that takes care of. I just noted because I don't know. But I think you have better information on you, so I defer to your
Well, all I have is
knowledge.
a table here that I don't understand, but it does list by different states. So that's all I got.
So, worth further exploration, right? Because I don't disagree with you. I think the basket approach is the right approach, but whether those are relevant components versus something that might be more specifically tailored, I just don't know. Not my area of expertise. But I can see the argument on either side.
And I think that it would be important that it be relatively simple, rather than every time we needed, an adjustment, that we have to go hire a consultant to take these,
Absolutely, 100%.
as well as for the developers who could look it up and know where it's at
Or have an
too. So
idea.
I think
Get a trend line.
yeah, so relatively simple in the process. So maybe we choose one that is more inclusive or something of that nature. It's easy for us, it's easy for the developer, easy for the community as a whole.
Okay.
What
Sorry, go
about,
ahead.
let me ask a question about the 20 million for mitigation for the Chimney Hollow. Are we gonna pass that on to within the cashing money? What?
Yeah, so that extra cost, I mean,
2
there's some
million or
money left in the contingency fund, but any other costs will have to be divided by the project participants. That would be, we're 6,500 90 thousandths of that, so doing the math, it's about $1.5 million to Longmont.
Yeah, I was just rolling it up to 2.
Round it up to 2. That's right, yeah, it's gonna be there, and that would be something that we would have to, pay for. That would be part of that project, so,
Yeah, so it'd be included in the figuring.
Well, it's just another point on that, though, that there's approximately $14 million left in their contingency fund. that they are looking to put towards this. It depends on some of the variations that they choose on how they treat, but Longmont's intention is that the monies that have already been allocated be used for construction of that, and that any operation would be done through assessments each year, so that we could look at that as we move forward. So that we're not looking to appropriate additional funds at this point in time to make it at this point.
Because the cost of those constructions have already been figured in at some point. Because didn't you say the cost to, and you were saying, we don't really build dams anymore, but of course we just did. So is that going to be included? I was just asking if that cost had been included with the.
In that
the
$770
cash in lieu.
million that they said for the total cost of the
Well,
dam?
the cash in lieu,
Right.
because that,
Oh,
that
so
adds
it's
to the
cash in
cost
lieu.
of the water that will be coming through there.
I don't know that we added.
I can't tell you right now, but I think your point, Chris, is that there's still money left. There might be a substantial part of the total cost for that still remaining, and then that difference, whatever it is, will need to be borne by the participants. And for us, like what Chris was saying, is that that might come through in the form of assessments, which if it comes through in the form of assessments, are part of your assessments or whatever they are. It's kind of like getting your car registered. We're just gonna have to pay for it as opposed to,
Capital expenditure.
yeah, it's something. So, a little bit to be determined.
So developers would not add to that.
Right.
So it sounds like everybody's comfortable with the process.
Okay.
I don't hear any disagreement. I like the process because it's predictable, and I mean, from a contractor standpoint, they'll probably, you know, we've whipped them around quite a bit in the past. I guess the thing that really is to be determined is which indexes we use to
Right.
apply to our cash and loop process.
So-
And, so that's what I want. Are we all right going forward with the thought process here? It's just a matter of determining which
Yeah.
items we use.
And maybe
to
what I
apply.
can do in a future meeting, I don't know if it would be next month. Next month's gonna be really trying to focus on our water supply and stuff, and I really wanna, that's gonna be an important topic. But maybe in May, which would give us, since we're coming now in a short turnaround for the next meeting, maybe in May I can come back with several different indices, including these, that you can kind of weigh and see. One of those I could commit to being like a real area-specific construction cost composite, and maybe some others we can reach out to Northern and see what indices they may or may not be using, so we're not having to try to reinvent the wheel. We can use somebody else's stuff and make it easy on us, and maybe we could have a list of a half a dozen different ones, and we could either, the board could decide if I really just like this one, or I like the average of all 6, or these 3, or whatever, and I could do that in May, and then that way in June, then it's just simply a matter of saying, here's what we know. Here's any CBT information we know, here's any native basin water rights we know, and here's the construction cost that we have. And then it's, I guess I would say, relatively simple math to figure out what it would be.
Well, on top of that, I personally would like a staff recommendation then too.
Do what?
A staff recommendation,
Okay.
so that, you know, they're throwing 6 different indices on.
Yeah.
Well, provide some information on the indices to us, not like a treatise, just some.
Yeah.
Stuff. I mean, at the end of the day, we're trying to make a recommendation to city council,
Yeah.
so staff recommendation is afforded a lot of weight and credibility generally for the board, and we would fashion it, but maybe we provide, here's our recommendation and here's some reasons why. Because anybody can look at a set of indices and come up with a different answer.
Pros and cons, yeah.
I don't think there's a right answer.
But if we
Hopefully
agree with
there's a
the,
best answer.
if we agree with the concept, that's
Yeah.
one
Yeah.
thing I want.
I agree
And
with
the
that.
other thing I think we need to do is zero in on dates, so we can make this thing happen
Yep. Time.
with the time, you know, and have it ready to roll out and let people know what is coming in January. Plenty of
Yeah.
time, so they know what's going on.
I think if we have a discussion about those indices in May, in June, you'd be able to make a decision in June. We can take it to water, or take it to council, any recommendation in that in July or August, and then that's gonna give them, the developers, 3 months advance notice of what the new cash flow would be. I think that's pretty
Yeah,
reasonable.
I think it'd be
Is it an
appropriate.
annual change or every 6 months? Refresh
It'd be
my memory.
annual.
It'd be annual based upon the rolling average.
Yeah.
And,
That's
and,
right.
and let them know that every January,
That's exactly
we're gonna,
right.
we're gonna give you a number.
That's what they
You know,
wanted, and that's what we
And
said.
that,
we
yeah,
would.
I think that works for everybody, so,
I think so.
well, very good. Yeah.
No.
The only interesting thing is there's probably a theoretical possibility that our cash flow goes down in a particular cycle, right? I mean, it's a
Yeah.
5-year rolling average, so it's unlikely to
Sure.
turn down sharply, but.
Well, I think it's gonna be a lot more predictable than what we've been dealing
Well,
with.
no,
I mean,
I-
you know,
yeah.
this
It'll be
is,
more closely aligned, right?
this is a nice solution to us fighting it the way we did before.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's predictable, treating the contract, so, okay.
And then
Okay.
maybe a little bit of clarity as well about whether there needs to be a change in the code.
It should be illegal. City
We'll
attorney.
we'll check with legal, but
Yeah,
I think
and-
Chris is right, that I think what the way it's written, we were very thoughtful when we wrote that, so it gave us the flexibility to include
Flexibility.
that, but
Yeah.
we'll double check with them.
Okay, anything else? Very good.
Great, thank you.
Thanks. Wes.
H2.
All right, we got a bunch of staff reports coming to us, so, 9A, Chris?
Yeah, I'll go ahead
You're on
and
deck.
introduce, I don't know if many of you remember in 2018, 2019, I came around to all the boards and said we were updating our design standards and construction specifications, and I was ambitious and thought we could do all 7 sections at that point in time, which is about 800 pages worth of standards and specifications. That got stalled a little bit, and we came back and did what we called Section 800 a couple years ago, which was to try and address smaller neighborhoods and look at standards for how we can get smaller corridors for utilities and those types of things. But since then, I've moved on from development into water and waste, and now Josh and Marie have taken up the standard, and they are coming forward with individual sections that they are updating, and we want to make sure to bring forward Section 500, which is our water standards, which I don't know if you got a chance to read through all 48 pages of it, but it's a lot of technical stuff. But I will let them go ahead and present.
Sure. Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, go right ahead.
What are your names again?
Yeah, I'm, sure. Josh Sherman, I'm the engineering administrator with Development Review and Public Works.
Okay.
Marie Nicholson Hutt, I'm with the fire department now, but I was in public works.
Oh, right, okay.
She jumped ship but was willing to see Section 500 through, so I appreciate that.
Okay.
If you
Is there-
scroll down to the next page, it's where these, your presentation is
Just
up
click
on
here.
the, yep.
I'll be pretty brief, but Chris did a great introduction.
If you click on that, present down there.
This one?
Yep. One more time. There you go.
All right, thank you. And just the same click to go forward?
Yep.
Perfect. We're working on, like Chris said, the public improvement design standards, construction specifications. Really what those are the city standards that set the policy, the criteria, the rules, the guidelines that ensure quality and consistency of installation of city infrastructure. So they're used by both city staff and developers. Two primary components are who are installing city infrastructure. The city standards are adopted by reference through the municipal code. And as such, their policy that we bring forward to council for their approval. And so, as Chris mentioned, there's several sections of the city standards. There's sections 100 through 800 now. Originally there was 100 through 700. Broken out primarily by sort of discipline. Section 100 is the general requirements, but then we have transportation, storm drainage, the water distribution system is section 500, which is what we're focused on today. Chris mentioned the urban design standard, that was section 800. That was a new section that was created to sort of look at density and urbanization type development at the direction of council. And once we got those approved, we were able to sort of come back and refocus on the design standards that existed and trying to get those updated. What I have highlighted in blue are just the sections that we've already brought forward to council. So again, section 800 was first, and then we came back. Brought section 100, which are the general requirements. They sort of broadly cover a lot of the criteria that affects all of the standards sections. So we needed to bring those first. And then section 700, which was Longmont Power and Communications, was ready, so we brought those together. With regard to schedule, those first bullet points are what I just mentioned in terms of what's been approved. Our next goal is to bring section 400, which is wastewater, 500 water distribution, and section 600 landscaping and irrigation, sort of bundle those together and bring those forward for review and approval together, so that we're trying to get in front of council sort of efficiently, right? Instead of maybe once every month, maybe with each section only a couple more times.
So, timeline, what piece before, you have a time set or criteria?
Yes.
It's all gonna happen this year, or?
Our goal is to finish them all this year. We brought 100 and 700 in November of last year. Our goal was Q1 of this year. We ran into just a small snafu in that we needed to meet current ADA compliance for all new published documents. And even though we were anticipating that, we just have been working with our comms folks on how to make that a reality. Believe it or not, the paragraphs you all got were probably the easier part. It's the details that are still giving us a little bit of a complication on how we're going to make those ADA compliant to be able to publish them on the website and to the public. But in terms of schedule, again, we plan on bringing 4, 5, and 6 together, hopefully next, later in Q2. Section 300, which is the storm drainage design standards, goes hand in hand with our storm drainage criteria manual, which is also being updated. So we've paired those two together, again, hopeful to bring those in Q2. Section 200 is our transportation section. We intend to bring that last. It has, we were hoping to sort of maybe bring it in with the Vision Zero action plan that our transportation planning department's working on. There's a lot of other updates that need to be done with section 200. So we'll see how those align, hopefully together later in this year. Right now, we're just starting really our sort of public engagement period, so, I don't know how to go back. We are going to bring all sections out for public engagement, so not just to the boards, but we've posted drafts, or we will post drafts to the website for the development community, for other stakeholders, etc. We advertise them out there for at least a month, so that if there's any questions or comments, we want to hear from those. And so that's really part of our goal today, is to inform this board that we've got section 500 in the form of a final draft. We want to share it with you all. And of course, if you have any questions or comments, we didn't expect you to read it all before this meeting, so we still have some time. We don't have a set end date to complete any of those comments for our public outreach. We won't have to set a firm date until we get on the council agenda to actually bring that section forward. So we've got at least a month, but likely a little more than that. So anytime over the course of the next several weeks, if you get a chance to review those, or really any of the other sections that will be getting posted up, and you have any questions or comments, we're happy to receive them and correspond or come back and talk about those.
So is this something that once you get through with it this year, the frequency of any updates or changes, is that going to be somewhat infrequent down the line, or what's your sense?
We hope it'll be more frequent than what it has currently been. Our current design standards were last approved in 2007. And so there's certainly some things in there that are dated.
Storm drainage criteria was the year I was born. 42 years ago.
Yeah, well, you're young. That's all I'm gonna say.
We've had some issues though, right? They actually, I think you guys went like in 2013, or were trying then, and there was a flood, and then 2018-19 got a little delayed with COVID at 2020, and so hopefully nothing bad happens. We can do it quicker.
But no, it's a good question, and there is a need to keep these current with the industry standards, with the current trends in construction, with what other municipalities, with what other jurisdictions are doing, like the Department of Transportation or others. So there is a need to keep them current and keep them updated.
Yeah.
I guess my question kind of speaks to that. Is there anything within these design standards that's like, that you would label as controversial or non-standard or something for specific to Longmont or something like, is it anything that's specific to our particular municipality that needed to be changed from kind of the general design standards that are just kind of like boilerplate, kind of
Sure.
like, you know, whatever your association is, kind of says, recommends or something like that?
Specifically for 500, I don't think so. I mean, again, these are talking about, you know, how do we size water mains and where do we put hydrants and what types of materials approved and those types of things. There's maybe a few things within our overall development process that's certainly maybe unique or slightly different than what maybe another jurisdiction does, and just how a developer, probably not so much as they work through the entitlement process of getting, you know, annexation and plats approved, but even through construction of those public improvements. You know, maybe on the Front Range, Longmont's not super unique, but we own and operate all the utilities outside of the gas, right, within our jurisdiction. That's not true for all of the municipalities who maybe rely on another water district to supply water and somebody else to supply electric. So we sort of, the way we administer that, because we have it all in-house, might be a little bit different, right? You know, in my experience over the last few years of sitting in the seat that Chris sat in and occupied before and working on these, probably Section 200 in the streets and transportation, especially with Vision Zero and some other things that are going on in that arena, maybe see more changes with how we're, you know, certainly more focused on multimodal transportation and pedestrians rather than designing for the vehicle, which if you look at some of the older standards and criteria, you know, that's how subdivisions or that's how development was done.
The water section specifically is basically kind of been operating as it's written now. Like these new ones, our water department has been trying to keep up with AWWA current standards and the way things are. Our 2007 standards are so obsolete that they've been handing out like rogue details to contractors because we can't install what is written from 2007. There's like hydrants that don't even exist anymore, right? And things like that. So it's really imperative that we actually give them, the contractors, something to stand on. That we've been kind of operating in a quasi like non-good way with the water section, and most of it is like current standards that mostly everyone follows. There's nothing like in this section in particular that's really outrageous. We were discussing it on the way over here. The only thing that we've been, one thing that had been coming up from the fire side actually, so it was interesting, because John Robb wanted our system to be more resilient. The code for fire hydrants and fire flow is a lot higher than is in the International Fire Code. So we're coming through council with a code amendment on that side to match the standards here, and it just makes our system more resilient. So that's the only thing that I can think of that is a little bit higher standard or abnormal, but it's actually for the resiliency of our water distribution system.
Other questions?
I don't know if you have anything else to add. I know you've got
No, you guys have done a
some
great job.
institutional knowledge in the back, so.
Right.
No, I don't have anything to
Okay.
say. Thank you.
Well, it's a big project,
It is.
you know, so.
And it's mostly put together on people who have all like retired or moved on.
That's why you're here.
Hey, Josh.
Yeah.
You know, I see this, looking at the index here, or, you know, the layout, I mean, it's really pretty quite technical from that perspective.
Yeah.
You know, from my perspective as
Sure.
a water board member, I guess I'm more interested in reviewing and seeing modifications in section 600.
Sure.
You know, especially with the water conditions that we're having now and
Yeah.
where we're headed with some of the modifications for park development and especially in, you know, some of our medians and some of those kind of things, so.
Yes, there's, just having sat through those meetings, not being the subject matter expert on that side, but, right, there's definitely some water conservation, and changes being made based on the state criteria and things like that for non-functional turf that are being included in section 600.
Great.
And we can
provide
probably
you
do
that draft
a
as well.
couple different things. Again, we just wanted to let you know that these are going to be available and specifically provide them to you. We can provide the others directly to you as well.
Yeah.
We can share a link to where they're posted online once we get them up there. We're not quite there with the ADA piece. This is the only part holding us up from getting posted online, those final drafts. So we can coordinate with Wes and his team on whatever is the easiest way to distribute the information.
Some people actually know that we as individuals are on water board and they'll ask us questions, and I guarantee more of them would come in section 600.
Sure.
Because it's visual, right? It's
Yeah.
people watering a golf course when we're having watering restrictions, all that. It's not the under the ground pipe layouts and the valves.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody's asking us that question.
Yeah, we rarely get questions about ductile pipe.
Rarely.
Yeah.
I'm
As long as you turn that
That's
tap
good.
on and water
That's
comes out,
good.
that's everybody's happy.
So I think he's right, though. I think it's
That's fair, sure.
Not that we have more expertise, but it's something we might be asked about more
course.
easily than.
And, part of our process is staff, and with all the stakeholders, internal stakeholders, we've been updating these from where they were, which was at a very, 95+% complete back in 1819. But things change over even just, the last 5-6 years. So we've been updating where they were. Then they've gone back through legal review, back through ADA compliance reviews. We're back to where we are with that final draft. I'll check in with the PM who's running 600. I think we're really close there too, and we can share those if they're ready now or as soon as they are.
Other questions? Other comments? Well, thanks for the work you do and keep us posted.
Yeah, thank you all.
All right.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for putting together that comment.
Okay, Chris, code changes for wastewater.
Yes, so I'll also introduce John Gage, because John's been working on that more than I have, so
Okay.
I'll let him cover it today.
Water Board. John Gage, I'm an engineering and operations administrator with the Water and Waste Department. So my primary responsibilities are to support our utility operations and maintenance group, which is pipeline infrastructure around the city, environmental affairs, which is regulatory compliance, and then electrical instrumentation controls, which you guys probably don't know a ton about, and that's okay. But I think it's really the water distribution side and then the water resources side, which is kind of collaborating on water conservation, which is what brings me all to you today. I don't know if you all have seen before or are familiar with waste of water in our municipal code. Does that ring a bell to anybody? Can I provide some context? I see some non-heads. Okay. Yeah, you don't want to waste water, right?
Excited, obviously.
Yeah, right. So Dan, tell us about it, right? So,
I can tell you from a mosquito perspective.
So I think this section of code historically has not always been really utilized, and there's a couple of reasons for that. I think we haven't had really heavy drought conditions in a long time, and so this code for waste of water has been there. It has ramifications for customers within the city who are wasting water. I don't have a fancy presentation, but I think you can envision it in your head. What is wasting water, right? Just running water over streets, broken irrigation lines that are continually leaking. Those are obviously places where we can be wasting water. And now with new meters, we can actually see leaks and things that are underground on an hourly basis that may not pop up above ground. So now we can identify and know when leaks are occurring. However, most leaks they get repaired because why would they get repaired? People get it on their water bill, right? So you're going to get a higher water bill and you're going to want to repair a leak. How this code got brought to my attention was our utility operations and maintenance group, who does do continuous consumption notifications to customers, brought to me kind of a unique area within the city, which is arterial right-of-way. So within the arterial right-of-ways, we as the city provide free water to irrigate those areas. It's supposed to be maintained by adjacent property owners. So if you think about it, right, you're supposed to, the adjacent property owner is supposed to mow it, maintain the irrigation system, and the city provides free water. Well, when there's a leak, as a customer, you're not really motivated to repair the leak when the water is free. So we would continuously notice these adjacent property owners that there was a leak on the property and there was just no action. So when you think about the quantity of water that we are irrigating specifically on arterial right-of-way irrigation, can be on the order of 50 million gallons per year. We've estimated 5 to 10% of that is leakage. And so when we notice these customers, essentially there's no ramifications at this point, no teeth, other than this waste of water code, which is definitely applicable. So we talked to the city attorney's office and said, hey, is this a reasonable use of the municipal code? And they said, well, it hasn't been used really, so you need to educate customers to make sure that they understand this is a tool. And then there were also some, I would say, just there was some vagueness to the code that the city attorney's office didn't like. So they wanted to add just some more detail that helped outline, a maximum penalty. Right, there was no max before. I think that would be really helpful to make sure that a customer wasn't applied a really high fee that wasn't reasonable. And then there were some notice requirements, right? The information that we need to relay to customers related to the waste of water that was happening there. So the waste of water code updates that we're bringing to council do not change the penalty fee amounts. It doesn't change the amount that occurs during a non-drought and a drought condition. Essentially, it just adds a lot of clarification to how we administer it. So it lays out what is waste of water, I think, a little bit more clearly. It tells like a definition of waste of water, provides us notice requirements, and it's just a little bit more clear. So we have provided some notice to these irrigation, right-of-way irrigation and HOAs within the backflow notification that they get annually. So there was a notice that, hey, the city has, it will tell you, if there's going to be a leak. And typically we are partnering, right? This is not we're looking to try and make money on this. This is a last resort tool if somebody's just not responding to us about, repairing a leak in their system. I think it's pretty timely. I actually started this process like 6 months ago with the city attorney's office before we had any of these water issues coming about drought watch. And I think it's pretty timely on the heels of, I don't know if you've shared Fix a Leak Week by EPA was this past week, where they encourage municipalities to try and get leaks resolved within their system. And then with this drought watch, that we have a tool that's updated. It's already there. It's already in code, but that's updated, and that we've educated people that it's there. So I'm happy to answer any questions on that in terms of how we plan to use that, or how we plan to notice people. But we just leave it there.
Your comment about people would notice water meters, that's noticeable, and the money isn't very noticeable. I would think that would be a real incentive.
Yes.
Maybe it is, maybe they don't understand, I don't know.
Yeah, so if you're paying for your water bill, yes, very noticeable. You're gonna get a big charge on there. We provide for, at least for this arterial right-of-way irrigators who get free water, we do provide them a bill. There is no dollar amount on the bill, but it does show consumption. So they're noticed, they can see how much water they're using on a monthly basis. And then we've provided, we reach out to them through notices in the mail as well as phone calls that, hey, there's continuous consumption on this irrigation line, and just get no resolution. There's either no callbacks or, oh, thank you for letting me know, and then there's no follow-up.
Is that working fairly well?
What's that?
Is it working fairly well?
No, that's not working well.
Have you had many thank you notes coming your way?
No, exactly, yeah. And so,
flowers and chocolate.
If I could just add a quick anecdotal note, oftentimes, like for HOAs is a great example of, they have property management companies who pay their bills for them. So oftentimes HOA boards don't even see the notifications that we're sending, right? So it's like they don't see their bills, they don't know what their consumption is unless they reach out to their property management company. So that's like a hurdle that we've been kind of trying to jump over, but we do think this will help in that way, because we'll be able to it will come on a city, more official notice, and then the property management company will be like, oh, we probably should let them know that this is happening.
Good point.
And what they'll be receiving is like notice that they're gonna get fined if they don't stop.
So yeah, there's a mail notice that's required, so that's one of the additions into the code. So before, I think it said 10 days notice, that you need to have this repaired. So now it outlines some things that we're supposed to include in the notification. But yes, they have a 10-day window essentially to respond to us. It says to make the repair. Normally, if somebody calls and says, "Hey, I can't get a plumber out here," we're totally understanding of that, right? I think we just want to see some level of movement that they're addressing the leak. But technically, the code says 10 days to make the repair.
And for the most part, the repair is gonna be like to an irrigation pipe or something.
Correct. Normally, it's going to be an irrigation line.
PVC in or something.
Yep, exactly. Normally, it's an irrigation line that just is broken.
Right.
Yeah.
And then one last question, if
Yeah.
I'm not jumping in. So I guess when I read through this just briefly, and I didn't study it or anything, but I did read through, where I ran into troubles in my own mind was just kind of understanding like where the floor is in waste or something. So in other words, like I don't know, is my neighbor who sprays off his driveway instead of leaf blowing the driveway or sweeping the driveway or something, is that a waste of water? Is that because that's intentionally kind of using water in a way that may be controversial to the rest of the neighborhood or something, like maybe other people think that they shouldn't be doing that. Like, how does that, where's the line? Like, what's waste versus what's use, just typical use or something?
Yeah, I think it's a great question because there's description within the code, right? But it's not if you waste this many gallons or if you run it for this long. And I think there's some intentionality behind that. I think there's somebody leaves their hose on during a non-drought condition for a long period of time, nobody's going to say anything. Somebody leaves it on during a high drought condition for 10 minutes. I think everybody's going to start looking at it a little bit differently. So I think there's intentionality behind how it's being described. There's discretion, right, that all of us as staff have to use occasionally on some of this stuff, and it's a good question. I don't know if I have an answer. Probably it's a lawyer answer, right? Like it depends. But Chris could probably speak to like how I think some of this would be elevated during a drought, right?
Right. Yes. Yeah. That the way that staff would review and look at different things. What we don't want is to create some type of a police state where we have neighbors looking out for neighbors to see who's spraying off what and using their water in what fashions. Really, it is to, at this point in time, is to look at those high volume leaks that we have happening that are not being addressed, so that we can get those taken care of and have incentive for people to do that.
Does the enforcement of this fall under code enforcement?
No.
It's in our section 14, municipal code. So it's a good question to end about who would be technically enforcing on it. Typically, what we have done as the Water and Waste Department is we're the ones sending just the email
notice.
or the mail notice. Yep.
And then if you don't get a response, then you
send in the big guns.
yeah.
Well,
Curious.
we have the ability to put it onto a water bill.
Correct. That's part of the last part of that code is, yes, it's, and that was part of the previous code too, was that we could put these fines onto a water bill, which, so that's not a change from the previous one either.
Yeah, so I don't believe that we need to write tickets or anything like that. But we can determine that they have wasted water, and then we can charge them accordingly when they meet those thresholds.
So, and you would be charging them for the extra usage. But at some point, are you going to do the repair if they don't do the repair themselves? And in terms of partnership, does that mean like you would encourage repair and then maybe the city would work with them to spread that out over a period of time?
I don't want to speak for Chris or what we've done in the past, but I know we have worked with customers if something was really expensive to spread it out on a water bill for certain expenses. And so that's possible. The code is not explicit in whether or not the city can go in and make the repair, although there are logical jumps you can make in code to get to that point.
Because it's right away.
At least in this point is right away, yeah. And then if it's on private property, that's a whole, another discussion. But again, it's in there, and the city attorney's office has said if something was damaging infrastructure and like, hey, our crews needed to get in there to stop this leak because it was undermining a road, let's say, right? We have the code authority to do it, and but yeah, it's not going to be our standard, right? Or else, that would be on the on the customers, right? To support teams to go out and fix private leaks, and I don't think all customers want to subsidize that type of fixing leaks on other private properties right away.
Okay. Any other questions? Thanks for the information.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, so this will go to council tomorrow.
Okay. Yeah. Very good. Okay, Alex?
Yeah.
Ready?
Yeah. So since our last meeting, or I guess since I last brought new legislation to the board, there have been two new bills which have been introduced into the House. The Mobile Home Park Water Quality and Sunset Water Vessel Registration Program. Neither of them substantially trying to do things that would affect the city. More importantly, I wanted to discuss a draft bill that's being circulated around that I found really interesting. It's looking at curbing vine dry operations in the lower Arkansas Valley. While that's not a valley of particular interest to the city of Longmont, I think the bill in itself and what it's aiming to do would be of great interest to the city and other municipalities in the Northern Front Range. It's trying to, kind of keep outside water users from coming in, purchasing land and its water, and effectively removing the water from the land without any, explicit revegetation efforts, creating, areas where weeds can come in, or even just the land itself can degrade and the soil quality as well. So I think this is just a bill that, should it be introduced into the House, would be important for the city to kind of follow, see how it develops, given that in the future similar efforts and bills could be brought in northeastern Colorado and the South Platte River Basin. Thornton and their work in the Poudre Valley has created a lot of angst towards the city just because of them pulling water out of the river basin.
They are reaching far away.
Yeah, and so I could certainly see this draft bill evolving and becoming something bigger around the state. So I just wanted to bring that to the board's
attention. That's an important issue.
Is that one of the bullets here?
No, so
Because
it's just a draft bill. So
okay.
There's no, it hasn't been brought to anybody in the city, of course, because it's in the lower Arkansas, but it's something I'll pay attention to and try and see.
Keep us posted.
Of course.
It certainly has an impact on sustainable agriculture.
Yes.
On what?
Sustainable agriculture?
Yeah.
Does it have a number yet?
Drying up a lot of
It's not
land.
presented
No.
yet. Okay.
Anything else?
No, nothing else.
So, you've got the next section of the water
I do.
supply.
Yeah. So again, last month we brought a water supply update, and this is kind of a lot of the same, just a further update for what's kind of happened in the past month. The March 1st stream forecast report from NRCS estimates that the St. Vrain Creek at Lyons could get around 52 to 64,000 acre feet for April through July this year. That's about 86% of the median. It's very possible that estimate could change come their April report, just given the past few days that we've seen higher temperatures, and we're starting to see some runoff starting to come. And while 86% of median doesn't sound too bad, the timing of that flow is what's most important for the city in terms of getting into the storage, which is most important. Lake Granby, which is one of the largest reservoirs in the state and where we pull a lot of our Colorado Big Thompson transbasin water for, is estimated for 120 to 139,000 acre feet for April through July, which is 69% of median. So it'll also be interesting to see how that might change in next month's report. Based on data from February, our March snow report shows Colorado headwaters at 64%. As of today, that's 73% of the median snow water equivalent. South Platte is showing 62% of median, and today showing 58%, while the St. Vrain is 53%, and today 57%. Storage, Ralph Price, for this time of year is 96% of the median, while Union is 73%. So all of this really just kind of helps to inform water resources and going forward how we might manage our water this year, but it's continually developing just as we go through the year and seeing what we can do. And of course, next month we'll be bringing the water shortage and supply report to the board for action, and we'll see what happens.
And we decide what we need to do or not need to do, so
Yeah.
it'll be interesting.
Still hoping for things to get a lot better, but
Yeah. Any questions for Alex? Okay, thanks, Alex.
That's next month.
Yeah, so we'll be coming next month we'll provide you the new implementation plan and looking for a recommendation from you to city council on what the appropriate drought response level will be. So as you recall, we have the sustainable where we're at now, and then there's a mild, moderate, and severe. And as Alex was saying, with the lack of snow and the higher temperatures, I think it's fair to say it's definitely approaching that, at least that probably that mild declaration. The data the decision is trying to be data driven, and the data right now is, with each passing day, is suggesting more and more moving towards that level 1 or mild declaration. And I think you'd find it's one of the things that we're also challenged with, I think, with this is that there's a lot of messaging going out from different communities about what different communities can and can't do. And this was a struggle in 2002 because we did when I say we, I'm thinking of our forefathers, did such a good job in planning for Longmont's water future, when other communities are really having to really sweat bullets. We're just starting to perspire. But that being said, trying to keep that same general message, it's kind of like Northern's. I heard it with Jeff Drager as they talk about, how impacting that the Northern Board's declaration is. I mentioned it before here. I mentioned it at council on the 3rd. It'll be part of our implementation plan. That's real impacting on our water supply. And it's really a ratio of supply to demand. But the real challenge is we're looking at not just this year, we're looking next year, and really for the next 5 or 6 years, because we're in the second year of a potential 7-year drought, and that's what we're planning for. And so I think when you go out in time, the uncertainty just becomes so much greater. But like Jeff mentioned, Northern, they set that 100% quota, and then, oh boy, we have another back-to-back really dry year, and then really starts making it, you have to react more severely. So it's, again, I think, I would not be surprised if when we come to you in April, the data suggesting probably moving towards a mild declaration.
Okay. We'll see what happens next month.
Yeah.
Yeah, be no surprise. Oh.
Yeah.
Okay, great. All right, Heather.
Yes, sir.
What do you got?
On March the 10th, City Council approved adjustments to their board interview process for applicants for boards. And so just wanted to share the update with you. It's not really too different from what we have already been doing. The main change for us is that our city council liaison will be sitting in on the interviews with us. But just to reiterate,
Oh.
You'd be stuck with me.
yeah, to reiterate the
It'll be all right.
procedures that they put forth, each board must choose and vote on a nominating committee in an open meeting. The nominating committee must be comprised of at least 2 board members, the staff liaison and the city council liaison. For boards that don't have a council liaison, the mayor will serve as the council liaison. All board members shall be given the opportunity to participate in the interview process. Members of the nominating committee may not be current applicants. All applicants, including those reapplying, will be interviewed. All interviews must be recorded. All applications, score sheets, and recordings must be provided to council for all eligible applicants. That's new wording for clarity, but it's always been our practice. And then boards will provide a formal written recommendation to city council. That recommendation will come from the nominating committee after the reviews. Council will not conduct additional interviews because they will sit in with the nominating committee. And boards will submit applicant interview questions to the city clerk's office for council's consideration, and final interview questions will be decided upon by the council liaison with input from staff liaison and the board chair, which we already reviewed those questions last fall. So
We've got a board opening coming up.
we have 1 vacancy that is coming up. I think it's your position, right, Tom?
Yeah.
So
When does the
next
announcement come out?
the
So I don't miss it.
the application process is, or recruitment is actually open right now. I think it was last Monday that it opened. Anyone on the board, with the exception of Tom, would be allowed to participate in the nominating committee, but we have to have at least 2 members for that, so.
When do we make that decision?
The application recruitment, I think, ends next month.
That sounds about
And
right.
then
Yeah.
in May is when we would do those interviews.
So the council could make an action in June, and then be reappointed at your July meeting.
Yes.
It's a mid-year appointment for water board.
Okay. Any questions for Heather? All right. Very good. We got the board report. Any comments on major project listings?
We just need an approval for the water board annual report to forward it to council.
That's in the form of a motion. Heather, I would move to forward the board reports to city council.
All right.
Second.
Yeah, that's really good. So,
Yeah.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Thank you for that.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. I think
I'm glad we don't have to draft it.
Alex did all the work.
No, I mean, it's really well done,
Great.
but if the board had to do it, it would be.
Which would you like the most about it?
Did you read it?
Hearts over the eyes.
It is fun to look back on the year.
Oh, I remember
And,
that.
yeah, you're like, oh, I
I'm trying to
remember that
recall that we
discussion.
actually did that, right?
Yeah.
It's nice to have one document too that kind of encapsulates everything, so you're not having to go to 12 different meetings or whatever. Somebody could, member of the public could go to this single report and gather a large chunk of what you guys did, and I think that's good.
Yeah.
I think what I like about it is it's not a single page. It looks like we actually did something over time. Like it wasn't a single action we took in 12 months, right? Like we did stuff.
Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
there's some stuff to it.
Your time is valuable.
It is.
No, I just think we do some good work.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Anything else before we adjourn? Nothing? All
Mr.
right.
Chair, I had one comment or one announcement to make. Just to let the board know that since Ken Houston had retired in September, that Water Resources staff has done an amazing job of filling in and stepping up and working with our HR department. It's going to be a few more months before we can get a posting out for the Water Resources manager. So I've made a decision to appoint an acting. And so at your next board meeting, we'll have an acting Water Resources manager seated.
We're going to have an acting one?
Yes, yep.
And when's that gonna happen?
Next month.
As soon as possible.
As soon as possible.
You
Very
said
good.
By
All right.
next month, you should know who that acting
Yes,
one is.
yeah.
All right.
Next month, we'll have
All
a
right.
sitting acting
All
Water
right.
Resources manager.
does the board have any, I don't know, involvement in the process by which a new manager gets hired?
Selected. That's not part of what's written in the
In the-
code for.
I doubt it.
Yeah.
I
No,
doubt
I
it.
was just, I couldn't recall or not.
The answer is no.
Yeah.
Anything else? All right, thanks for your time, we're adjourned.
Thank you.